Oh, hi there. My name is Mr. Finelli. You may have seen me in such movies as Around Campus. I am in a triad group with Mrs. Ebert and Mrs. Burke, and I have the privilege and honor to do the read aloud to the fourth grade, the entire fourth grade, during our at home distance learning. Yes, let's do it. The read aloud I chose was one I find very adventurous and fun and accessible to all different reading levels. And if you've read it already, that is okay. People often read books more than once to pull that next bit of information out they may have missed in the beginning. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our read aloud, Poppy, by Avi, illustrated by Brian Flocka. Now, there'll be some interesting vocab that I will go over and pull out, so in hopes after each section of reading, we can look deeper into that vocab and ask questions about setting, characters, author's purpose, all those good things. So, sit back and enjoy as we begin Poppy, Chapter 1. Mr. Okax. A thin crescent moon high in the sky shed faint white light over Dimwood Forest. Stars glowed, breezes full of ripe summer fragrance floated over nearby meadow and hill. Dimwood itself, veiled in darkness, lay utterly still. At the very edge of this forest stood an old charred oak on which sat a great horned owl. The owl's name was Mr. Okax, and he looked like death himself. Mr. Okax's eyes, flat upon his face, were round and yellow, with large ebony pupils that enabled him to see as few other creatures could. Moonlight, even faint moonlight, was as good as daylight for him. With his piercing gaze, Mr. Okax surveyed the lands he called his own, watching for the coming and goings of the creatures he considered his subjects and his dinners. He looked at Glitter Creek, home to the fish he found so appetizing, the tar road, across which tasty rabbits were known to hop, Jay's Wood, where meaty chipmunks some skittered before dawn, and by swiveling his head, he searched the marsh for a savory frog. Then Newfield, where usually he could count on a delicious vole or two. He looked at Grey House, where Farmer Lamont used to live, and then upon Old Orchard. He even looked nervously toward New House. But nowhere did he see a thing to eat, and profoundly annoyed, Mr. Okax was beginning to think he would have no dinner that night. But finally, there near the top of Bannock Hill, where the ponderosa pines had all been cut, where only a few struggling saplings and bushes grew, he saw movement. Just enough. The glimmer of food made his beak clack, his feathered horns stand up tall. Mr. Okax shifted his head left and right and forward and back, and when he did so, he beheld two mice. Of all the creatures the owl hunted, he enjoyed mice the most. They were the best of eating, to be sure, but better still, they were most fearful. And Okax found deep satisfaction in having others afraid of him. And here, after a wait of nearly the whole night, were two tasty, savory subjects to terrify before he ate them. One of the two, a deer mouse, crouched cautiously beneath a length of rotten bark. The other, a golden mouse, stood in the open on his hind legs, his short tail sticking straight out behind for balance. From his left ear, an earring dangled. In his paw, he held a hazelnut. "It's not as if I haven't warned these mice," Mr. Okax murmured to himself. "If they will move about without my permission..." They have only themselves to blame for the consequences. He leaned forward to listen. His sharp as needle talons, four to each large claw and jet black at their tips, cut deeply into the branch he was perched on. Catching these two mice is going to be fun. On Bannock Hill, the golden mouse turned to his timid companion and said, "Poppy girl, this hazelnut is bad to the bone. Bet you see the sap there's more where it came from. Come on out and dig." "Ragweed," Poppy replied as she sniffed tensely in all directions. "You promised we'd dance when we got here. We can't do it in the open. Besides, I want to answer your question. So will you please get under here with me?" Ragweed laughed. "Dude, you must think I'm as dull as a dormouse. You just want to get some of this nut." "I don't want any of your precious nut," Poppy insisted. "I want to give you my answer, and I want to dance. Isn't that the reason we came up the hill? It's not safe out there." "Oh, tell me about it. You heard my father's warnings," Poppy went on. "It's Mr. Oakhurst. He might be watching and listening." "Get off," Ragweed sneered. "Your pop talks about that Oakhurst dude just to scare you and keep you under control." "Ragweed," Poppy cried, "that's ridiculous. Mr. Oakhurst does rule Dimwood, so we have to ask his permission to be here, and you know perfectly well we never did." "Dude, I'm not going to spend my life asking an old owl's okay every time I want to have some fun. You know what I'm saying? This is our moment, girl, right? Now that I dug up this nut, I'm going to enjoy it. Besides, it's too dark for that old owl to see me." "Poppy," Mr. Oakhurst scoffed under his breath. "Ragweed. Which stupid names mice have. Now, if only that dear mouse will move just a little farther out from under cover, I'll be able to snare both mice at once." The mere thought of such a double catch made Mr. Oakhurst hiss with pleasure, and then he clacked his beak, spread his wings, and rose into the night air. Up he circled, his fluted flight feathers beating the air silently. High above Bannock Hill he looked down. The golden mouse, the one eating the nut, was still in the open. So brazen, so foolish. Nevertheless, Mr. Oakhurst decided to hold back another moment to see if the deer mouse might budge. "Ragweed," Poppy pleaded, "please get under here." "Girl, do you know what your problem is? You let your tail lead the way." Poppy, hurt and wanting to show that she was not a coward, poked her nose and whiskers out from under the bark. "Ragweed," she persisted, even as she began to creep into the open. "Being careless is stupid." Her friend took another scrape of the nut and sighed with pleasure. "Poppy," he said, "you may be my best girl, but admit it. You don't know how to live like I do." Poppy took 2 more steps beyond the bark. Just then, Mr. Oakhurst pulled his wings close to his body and plunged. In an instant, he was right above and behind the 2 mice, and once there, he threw out his wings to break his speed, pulled back his head to protect his eyes, and thrust his claws forward wide like grappling hooks to pounce. It was Poppy who saw him. "Ragweed!" she shrieked in terror as she hurled herself back under cover. "It's Oakhurst!" The owl was already upon him, and down came his right claw, and it scratched the tip of Poppy's nose. Shink! Down came his left claw, and it was more successful, clamping around Ragweed's head and neck like a vice of needles, killing him instantly. The next moment, the owl soared back into the air, a lifeless Ragweed, earring glittering in the moonlight hung from a claw. As for the hazelnut, it fell to the earth like a cold stone. Powerful but leisurely strokes brought Mr. Oakhurst back to his watching tree. Once there, he shifted the dead ragweed from talon to beak in one gulp. The mouse disappeared down his throat, earring and all. His hunger momentarily satisfied, Mr. Oakhurst tilted back his head and let forth a long, low cry of triumph. Woo, 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 woo. Poppy did not hear the call. In her terror, she had fainted, and now she lay unconscious beneath the length of rotten bark. The old owl did not mind. He had enjoyed the first mouse so much he decided to wait for the second. Indeed, Mr. Oakcox was not entirely sorry that Poppy had escaped. She was terrified, and he enjoyed that. And for sure, he would get her soon. Oh yes, he murmured to himself. Mice are the most fun to catch. Then Mr. Oakcox did that rare thing for an owl. He smiled. That brings us to the end of chapter 1. And you have to agree, pretty action-packed chapter 1. It's odd, or a curious thing, to have such a big character die so quickly into a book. I'd like to know your thoughts about it. There's going to be some questions and a follow-up to this, and really, just to try to understand your perspective on the book and the characters so far, and Mr. Oakcox, and Poppy, and poor old Ragweed. Tune in next time. See ya. No way.